Number one, he secured a percentage of 42.15%. Candidate number two secured 0.29%. Candidate number three had 57.56%. By the power in me vested, now total turnout is 74%, 74.23%. Now please can the candidates come. By the power in me vested,
election is a referendum. It's a referendum between the people of Ghana and MPP. And I'm excited because the people of Assin have really spoken what the people of Ghana have been saying all the time. And that is that this government in the past 7 years has failed the people of this country. Here we are where inflation is about 42%. During our time, inflation was 15.5%. And they went on a spree of saying that we have failed as a government. We have failed as a government. Now, here we are, where our pensioners who have worked for so many years are now having to picket just to get the little money that is due them. Our factories have been shut down. Our currency has become a junk currency. You know, with all these things, you know, the people of Assin has spoken the language that the people of Ghana want to hear. And the results are very clear. Look, NDC had 58% and MPP 42%. Such a landslide is a message to the government that either they sit up and talk to the people of Ghana, they need to talk to us. Ghana belongs to all of us. The idea that only a few people can run this country has now been really made clear that they cannot. So I'm excited not for NDC, but I'm excited for the people of Ghana.
But this one was very swift. With just a few of the polling centers announced, we heard shouts of jubilation. How did you do it?
Yeah, because we campaign. I mean, we have been in this constituency for the past 1 month, 2 months, right? And we engaged the people. So we knew how the people were going to vote. We knew. So when we got about 20 polling stations, we knew we had won, right? So, I mean, the important thing is that the people have spoken.
What kind of technology did you adopt and strategy did you adopt? Because this is, someone would say, unusual of the NDC for you to collate election results very fast like that.
It's a fallacy. We always are able to collate our results. But this time I wanted to prove to the people of Ghana that within 1 hour, within 2 hours, we can get our results. And you saw it, within 2 hours, we've got our, it's taken the EC so many hours to get the result. But within 2 hours, it shows you that NDC, we are capable, and we are doing it. But unfortunately, the system was stuck against us. Now, we are going to 2024, and we know what to do now. We are not going to come public and say this is how we are going to do it. But you yourself, you saw that within 2 hours, you have been able to collate our results.
after Fifi Kwete and then pick a word from him. Thank you very much. Welcome to PM Express.
Thank you very much.
What as a political party, you fought so hard.
Yeah. Let's say, I mean, for us, it actually goes beyond the NDC as a party. It goes beyond the NDC. It's a victory not just for candidate Gyakye Quayson. It's a victory. It's a victory for truth. It's a victory for justice. And also it's a victory that signals that the people of Ghana are not prepared to sell their soul. That you cannot destroy a nation politically, morally, pervert the systems, the institutions, and come and think that you can buy the soul of the people by throwing what you call last-minute goodies at them, trying to deceive them and so on. So it's a number of great victories beyond just Assin. I'm
going to engage you further, but let me pick a word from Honorable Gyakye Quayson. Good evening. Welcome to PM Express.
I thought I just spoke to your counterparts.
No, this is JoyNews. PM Express live on TV. Good evening.
Good evening.
Should be a happy now by now. Happy man by now.
I've always been happy. Tonight is exceptional because as in our people have vindicated every court and myself, and they still believe in me, so that makes me happy.
What does this victory mean to you personally? Are there lessons to be shared to the whole world?
Well, I mean, principles and values I work with, and I don't quit easily. So long as I know the cause I'm leading is genuine and it benefits other people. You see, you haven't been in a situation where you have to sacrifice your own life interest for the benefit of others. Until you are there, you will not understand it. Somehow you get an inspiration and you become fearless because you are standing for the truth, you are standing for justice, you're standing for almost everything that benefits other people other than yourself. That is why we have people like the Kwame Nkrumahs and we have people like the Mandelas. All right? Otherwise, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to be in that position sometimes. So I'm very...
What do you tell the people of Assin North for what they have done, the victory they have given you?
Well, the victory belongs to them. The victory belongs to Ghana. And the victory belongs to rule of law, justice.
Are you daunted by the fact that you'll be going to court very soon?
No. That's the least of my thought. I'm focused on how I can get Assin North developed. The court can take its own course. I mean, as I said earlier, I have not committed any wrong to worry about what is ahead of in legal terms. No.
All right. Thank you very much, Gyakye Quayson.
Thank you.
The one that has been declared as the winner of this by-election. Let me come back to Fifi Kwete. So, does this election, the results that we are seeing now, does it have a bearing on the 2024 elections?
I would say it's a signal. It's a signal that the country is ready to do everything possible to stop a number of things that are going on. I mean, the destruction of the economy, the destruction of the moral fiber of the country, the perversion of our institutions, the weaponization of institutions to destroy truth and justice. I think a number of things are at stake, and the people of Ghana are signaling that enough is enough.
Did you send sympathy votes, or it was just a referendum on the economy of Ghana?
I see it's a number of things, so many things together. The people clearly are tired. The people clearly have seen that their economy is destroyed, their welfare is down. They can see the injustice that was happening. They can see the insults that was happening by last-minute attempt to buy their soul using what you call money and gold. So many things were together. So we see a signal, an awakening, and a message that is being sent to the rest of Ghana.
And what should we be expecting from the NDC as you've chalked this victory? What should we be expecting from you?
We are going to move into high gear. We are going to move into strategy. We are going to move to what you call effective planning towards 2024. And of course, coming up with ideas that we need to be able to revive this economy and restore Ghana again.
It appears that we were very swift in collating this particular result. Under 2 hours, you were able to put together the results and then the jubilation started. I mean, is it a sign of some new development that we should?
We have said it, that some of the mistakes made in the past will not be repeated. I personally have pledged to the country that we will clearly see a collation system that's different. That's the beginning of things that are happening.
Number one.
Thank you so much for staying here on the AM show. Just gone by, you heard the returning officer declaring James Gyakye Quayson as MP-elect for Assin North. And then we heard from officials of the party, including General Secretary James Gyakye Quayson, and we heard from, Fifi, I beg your pardon. And then we heard from Mr. James Gyakye Quayson himself. Much later, I will be bringing you an interaction you don't want to miss with Dr. Assin, who's a political scientist, and we've also got our man, Dr. Osai Kwapong, joining via Zoom. And the news review was brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and it's offering a free prostate screening and free female fertility screening. Here's where you can find their facilities in Accra, Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard, in Kumasi, Kronum, Abuehia, behind Angel Educational Complex, and in Takrade at Anaji Estate. In Tema, you can find them in Community 22, and at Hensia in Tichiman, and Siama in Nzema. If you want further information or more information, please call 0244867068 or 0274234321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic diseases. And for AM Sports, you saw that interaction earlier with Stephen Appiah. That will be airing on Friday. I beg your pardon, I said it was a recap. The actual full interview airs on Friday during Prime Take, so keep that locked in your diaries. Let's now talk about the big one, the Assin North by-elections. You know the drama that led to that particular by-election. It started from the NPP raising concerns about Mr. Gyakye Quayson and whether, or at the time he was contesting to be MP for the area, he had renounced his citizenship to Canada. And you know the drama that unfolded, the Supreme Court eventually asking the Clerk of Parliament to expunge his name from its records. Then the Electoral Commission obviously did declare the elections to be held, the by-elections to be held. And the two major parties began their campaigns. And then we saw, because there's a criminal aspect to the case, Mr. Gyakye Quayson in court trying to get some time to focus on that one. The court granted him some days off, permission not to appear in court, and then he went to Assin North, I think just about a week ago, and started his campaign earnestly. And yesterday, the voters in Assin North decided to give him another chance. What does that mean for the NDC? What does it signal? We also know that there were concerns about vote buying, allegations made especially by the National Democratic Congress. There were also issues of people who tried to disrupt the process, but generally it was a peaceful one. Let me now bring in my guests as we zero in on the issues as they unfolded in Assin North. Thank you so much for staying, Dr. Assin. He was with me during the news review and he's still staying. And Dr. Osai Kwapong, thank you also for joining us. So let me start with you, Dr. Kwapong, because we've heard Dr. Assin's initial comments. What does this look like for you, considering the margins by which Mr. Gyakye Quayson won and the signal generally that this sends to both of the parties?
Yeah. Good morning. Thank you for having me. So I was on the show yesterday morning saying that it was hard to predict who was going to win, and that it was going to be, at least it appeared that it was going to be a very competitive race. If you look at all the big quote-unquote guns from both of the parties that had showed up and converged upon Assin. The election results, the gap was even much wider than what was seen in 2020. And I think part of it is because I believe part of it is the framing of the issue by the NDC, right? That I think of all of the things that they said in their messaging to the people of Assin, one theme was central to the campaign, which was this was a matter of righting the wrongs that had been done to Mr. James Quayson, that this was a matter of justice. And they kept repeating that and repeating that and repeating that. And so my initial observation is that the message of justice and righting the wrongs against the winner, Mr. Quayson, won at the end of the day. But beyond that, I think with such an election victory, and you saw that in the comments from the NDC officials that you spoke to, like Mr. Fifi Kwete, that the momentum is on their side, and I know that they are going to run wild with that momentum as a signal of saying, look, in a very competitive constituency, this is the victory we've been able to pull off, and it is a sign that we are ready to go into battle 2024 and wrestle power from the MPP. I believe that for the ruling party, they are likely to respond and say all elections are local, and the fact that whatever happened in Assin is purely a matter of Assin and has no bearing on the upcoming national election in 2024. But I think I think that they would also admit that there are signs of vulnerability emerging from Assin North, and there are lessons that they can learn as a ruling party as they go into 2024 from what happened in Assin yesterday.
The NPP marshaled a lot. The president himself was there, making some pronouncements that people found problematic about what the future of Mr. Gyakye Quayson is in relation to the criminal case in court. There are those who said that that was a no-go area for the president and he shouldn't have made those comments at all. For you and from where you sit, considering that all these bigwigs were there, including the president himself, what is the precise lesson in here for the party? Considering also that this particular constituency is a swing constituency. Over the years, we've seen it. The MPP, I think, for parliamentary has had it about 4 times. If you add Mr. Quayson, this should be about the 3rd time for the NDC. So clearly, not so much dominance by one party or the other. But what should the NPP be learning from this experience, considering that the people themselves said, we took your money and we voted otherwise? What's the lesson in here for that party?
And the lesson here is that in very competitive districts, very competitive constituencies, voters would ultimately do what they believe is right or do what they really want to do, regardless of rhetoric, regardless of any inducement, regardless of the things we do to try to get them to vote for a particular party, that ultimately the decision rests with the voters. I found it very instructive watching a number of TikTok videos this morning where you see all these group of people singing the song of Charles Opoku Sikani Edi, right? And it's this feeling of, look, yes, you came, you offered money, we took it, but we still decided that there's a particular candidate that we want. And so I'm hoping that going into 2024, particularly in the swing areas, in the very competitive areas, that our two parties would be minded that, look, at the end of the day, your messaging is very important, and that even if you want to engage in the business of inducements, nobody is going to stop you from engaging in that. But keep in mind that ultimately, the voters are going to decide. And I keep bringing our parties and their supporters back to one of the findings from the CDD Ghana pre-election survey back in 2020, which was, there was a question about, do parties offer inducements, et cetera, et cetera. They said yes. And then they listed a number of what should you do if a politician or a party gives you an inducement. And it was very instructive to see the percentage of respondents who said, I'll take it, but I'll still vote the way I want to vote. And I've been highlighting that particular sentiment because I don't think that message has really caught on yet with our parties, that you can offer all of the inducements that you want, but the effect of it has its limits because voters will still do exactly what it is that they want to do.
Interesting. I'll come back to you, Doctor, as we discuss more. But Dr. Asante, we've heard your earlier comments, impressions about what happened in Assin. But just for those who are joining us just now on the show, quickly just give us a brief summary of your impressions about the by-election.
Yes, as I already said in the earlier account, and that intimidation, harassment, lies, deception, bribery, or inducement do not win anybody power. And that it's by dint of hard work that you win power. And it flows from the idea that Kwame Nkrumah had also thrown to us, that organization decides everything. If you look at what happened, 3 or 4 things came to light. The issue of resources and how it was managed, the issue of strategy, the issue of message. All right, look at the resources. NDC, financial and material resources, they mobilize them effectively to be able to do the kind of work that they did. Look at all the top guns were ferried to that place. Look at the rank and file. Their work, they are there in their numbers to give support for the party. If you look at material resources, they were able to, do all manner of things with resources. Look at the issue of strategy. A lot of strategies were employed by the NDC. They sent advance party to go and do the recce work, do the underground work. And then the whole party machinery followed up with another consistent plan that they were able to explain or execute effectively. And that was captured by Evisefri Ankara. If you look at the issue of propaganda was employed, and research has shown that in Ghanaians' election, propaganda play a lot of role in here. And I saw 2 of them. The bandwagon effect as a propaganda technique was used. That yes, everybody voted, if you like, majority of people voted for Gyakye Quayson in the last election because of a problem. He came out of parliament. And now, if you think that that decision is the right one, why don't you join the right people? That's the bandwagon effect. It worked very well in this election. We also saw the issue of another propaganda technique of what? Testimonia, that the right thinking people within the party came and then endorsed Gyakye Quayson, that he's the right man for the job. He's being, if you like, hounded. He's being persecuted. These are the words that they use, persecuted and the rest of them. And this really, agitated the minds of the people to want to safeguard the vote that they gave to their leader 2020. And of course, issue of what vigilance was also critical here. That yes, you can marshal all resources, you can put all manner of strategy together. But if there's no strategy that places emphasis on vigilance, that you shepherd the process from beginning to the end, and then you are going to lose out. NDC did exactly that. So they voted massively. They were able to canvass support for their people to vote massively. They were able to, when they started jubilating, they were able to what? Tell them that to follow the process and shepherd it to its logical conclusion. And that was also at play. Issue of technology was not left at all as a technique. That this time around, their technology about how they collect their results and get all their statistics right, so as to be able to place themselves in a better position to follow the process to its logical conclusion, was very much advanced. And then you saw the issue of the big guns going to campaign for the NDC. John Mahama and the likes of John Mahama, Assin Ketia, and all that. And then the framing, as Dr. Sankwapong has said, was also key. Because whilst we're expecting MPP to be able to drum home their messages and all that, they were talking about threats, that you go to jail, you will do this. But the real message were really missing. But these people frame a message of hope, a message that he was not going to jail, and that a message that resonated with the people. Look at the point of what messaging. Messaging will talk about issue of the economy. They drum home the issue of what the economy, that the economy is at its lowest ebb, and that look at how it's affecting you. And remember, research has shown that one of the factors that voters consider in every election is the number one is the economy, because a hungry man is an angry man, and they drum home that message perfectly. Issue of infrastructure came in, and you saw the government quickly building, roads overnight and all that. Yes, that was an effort coming at the wrong time. It sent a wrong signal that it was meant for deception, nothing more, nothing less. Because if you meant well for us, you wouldn't start road construction when we are getting to by-election. And more so when you are doing it at the night. Who is dying that we need road to be fixed in the night to save the person at the night, to ferry him across a river to another point? That all explained that there was a lot of deception in there. But the infrastructure argument came in here, where NDC joined in and said, yeah, the huge infrastructure that you see there, other constituencies, we build them. And that is why we are saying that give our man the mandate to continue from where we left off. And that message was really up. Issue of what, they also frame message up around what the common fund, that yes, common fund is used for development of the area. If you have not seen that much, it's because the government had denied Gyakye Quayson the common fund that we use for development. But in spite of all that, he's using his meager resources to develop you. And that there's a need for you to support him to come and continue the good work he's doing. All in all, if I want to sum up all these things, I would say that the things that came at play was the protest vote. The people protested, and that, yeah, they believe that there are a number of injustices have been done to Mr. Quayson, and they believe that they are the people who call the shot. So they decided to vote in a certain direction. Issue of tactical voting. Tactical voting is where you vote not necessarily because of the candidate, but for your party to be able to send a clear signal to the people that there is something wrong that they need to correct, and it's your party which has the political wherewithal to be able to execute that. We saw that. Issue of also popularity of Mr. Quayson also came to play, because
we lost Doc there, but we will allow him to conclude his thoughts when we're able to establish a good connection with him. But we've been joined by Mr. Peter McMahon, who is a former chairman of the New Patriotic Party. Good morning to you, Mr. McMahon. I just seen that on Twitter, you had put up a tweet that a peaceful by-election at Assin North constituency is a must. Before we go into your thoughts about the general conduct of the elections, it's early days yet, and so I know that there hasn't been a proper meeting to assess what exactly led to the the loss of your candidate in that constituency. But from where you sit as an individual, what are your initial thoughts about what could have led to this defeat? Mr. McMenu.
Yes, Benny, I'm here.
Please, did you get my question?
Yes, I'm okay with the question. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
No, I'm okay with the question. What is a peaceful election? I mean, an election must be conducted or must happen in a peaceful atmosphere. I mean, obviously, you don't want to win an election in a violent atmosphere. But before I proceed, let me congratulate NDC and Gyakye Quayson for their victory. And let me call on all the voters, the electorate, and the citizenry in Assin North for the peaceful manner in which they conducted themselves. There were just quite a few trickles of violence here and there, but on the whole, I think the security and the Electoral Commission all perform their duties responsibly. And as you quoted from the quick tweet, peace in an election is a must.
Do I still have Mr. McMenu on?
Yes, I'm on.
All right, great. I thought you had more to say there. But I mean, for you, like I mentioned earlier, I know the party is yet to sit down to conduct its own assessment of what may have gone wrong, leading to the defeat of your candidate. But as an individual, from where you sit, we've heard from our analysts who have pointed to problems with the messaging, problems with the president's statement on the future of James Gyakye Quayson in relation to his the criminal case in court. But for you, from where you sit, your initial assessment of what may have led to the loss of your candidate, what is your assessment pointing to?
Well, first, before you do any assessment, you must look at the profile of the constituency. Okay? Assin North is a rural constituency. We won in many of the major towns and lost in the hinterland. So we need to do an assessment of what went wrong there. Because we looked at the previous figures in the previous elections, and those were key areas that we lost. So we tried to send a different message to those areas. I mean, basically, they are farmers, they are occupation, cocoa farmers, rice farmers, and foodstuff farmers. So what must have affected their level of production, their level of occupation, that our message did not send across properly. We need to interrogate that, and we are going to do that. What has been the general infrastructure? And mind you, Assin North is a new district that was created very recently. Their capital, Breku, what kind of infrastructure has the government been able to put out there? High school, hospitals, roads, etc. All these are things that voters will look at and then will be emotionally satisfied before they cast their vote. And it will be our duty to also protect the votes that they cast for us. So we look at our strong areas, try to consolidate our gains and protect our votes, and then try and send a strong message that will touch the hearts of the voters in our opponents' strongholds so that we can win them or break it in those areas. That was the strategy.
Mr. McMenu, don't you find it rather insulting that the build-up to a by-election is what prompts the grading of roads in the area and the quick fixes to some infrastructure there. I say this because on the national scale, we have seen it, where the year in an election year or the months preceding an election see a lot of fast-paced development and commissioning here and there. And now, at the constituency level, we are replicating that. Haven't we gotten to the point where politicians like yourself must begin to place some respect on the voters?
I think that you should not take the voters for granted if you ask this question. You should never underestimate the intelligence of the voter. Let the voter decide, and that's what they have decided. Okay? But as a government, you owe it a duty to develop your country. Okay? And I think I started by saying that Assin North is a new district which was carved out recently. Okay? So as to whether it's an insult or not, leave that to the voters. But don't be insulting the voters as well, because they want development. And mind you, it does not take 1 month to construct roads, to construct schools. So if these projects have not been initiated earlier on, it would not have been possible for some of them to be inaugurated. Okay, so some of them have been on the drawing board for far even too long, as I may say. So if you speed it up. In other jurisdictions, maybe there are laws that says that put timelines on when projects will be inaugurated, like in Senegal. Okay, but the government has a duty to bring development anytime, anywhere, when resources, and mind you, when resources are available. And don't take the voters for granted, please.
Right. What are your thoughts on President Akufo-Addo's statement on the future of James Gyakye Quayson? Your party chairman, Mr. Stephen Ntim, has come to his defense, but there are those who believe that the statement was prejudicial. What are your thoughts?
President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo did not say we are going to see this. He did not say any emphatic words like we're going to send Gyakye Quayson to prison. And me and you and the entire Ghanaian citizenry, we know that he has a matter, a criminal matter, pending in court. And if precedent are anything to go by, we know what happened to Boku Central MP, Adamu Sakande. So, whereas other people, and let me emphasize it, whereas other people from other political parties were saying nobody can jail Gyakye Quayson, what is your response to that? It is the court. So he was emphasizing it's the court. He didn't say he's going to jail. He doesn't have the power to jail Gyakye Quayson. So this is off-target. I mean, the matter is in court. So let's preserve it as such.
Statement that should have even come up, considering his status as the president. I get what you mean by his statement was not emphatic by saying that don't vote for somebody who could end up in jail. But should that have been a point or an arsenal to use against Mr. Gyakye Quayson?
Oh, so you realize that could be an arsenal, eh?
No, I am asking because he said this on a campaign platform, right? Trying to convince people to vote otherwise. And so
but some people had earlier on from other political parties gone ahead to say that nobody can incarcerate Quayson. Eh? You heard that. And that the matter is pending before the law court. So why should people be commenting on it to begin with?
Interesting.
So the matter is pending before the law court. So let's leave it as well, please.
Right. And there's also another statement that was made by the president. I earlier heard it from the roads minister, and the president repeated same. And this was when the president addressed congregants at a Church of Pentecost in the build-up to the elections. And he suggested that the people of Assin North should vote for Charles Opoku, who is the NPP's candidate, because he'll be able to sit with him to have or to foster development, to suggest that if somebody is not a member of the ruling party, then probably development will be lacking in that area. What are your thoughts on that as well?
I think the government comes out every year with a budget program. The government has medium-term programs and long-term programs, which covers the entire country. The government is a government of the New Patriotic Party. Believe that. And the New Patriotic Party was voted into power based on our manifesto. That is the program that we are going to build and invest in this country. So, isn't the government running on the promises and the manifesto and the platform of the New Patriotic Party? If I may ask.
So if that is the case then, which ideally should be the case, where development is not limited to the affiliation of your MP to a certain government, why should that come up at all? It then suggests that that is the reality, even though ideally we should have development according to the budget, according to what is stated in the nationalistic view. Doesn't the president's statements then suggest that that is the ideal situation? But the reality is, if you really want development, you should get somebody who is on my side.
Dennis.
Mr. McMahon, please go ahead with your response.
The government has a duty and has laid out a budget statement that outlines its expenditure and revenue every year. The government has a medium-term program. The government came to power through its manifesto. And it covers the entire country. But a region where we did not win a seat, like OT region, we are developing OT region.
So why then should a president make that statement? He made that statement.
I can tell you, you are a media person. And to be on the campaign trail is different from what media persons may think. Because you want to talk to the voter, you send him a message that will resonate with him to enable him vote for you. That is different from when you sit down and do an analysis in the media. So distinguish campaign voter contact from media engagement.
Right, Mr. McMahon, I appreciate your time here this morning. Thank you so much for joining me. Peter McMahon is a former national chairman of the New Patriotic Party, and he was sharing his thoughts with us on the Assin North by-election. And so do I have Dr. Asante back on the line? Right, Doc, we lost you there, and that prompted my interview with the NPP's Peter McMahon. I'll come back to you shortly because we've been joined by the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustapha Bande. Mustapha Bande, good morning to you. And before we go into the excitement around your votes, I just want a quick update on your youth organizer. Mr. McMahon just made reference to some pockets of violence we recorded, and your youth organizer's vehicle was affected. His windows were shattered and smashed, and I understand that other officials of the party were saved by a whisker. How are they doing, and what's the latest on that? We know the police arrested some people as well. Just give us the latest on that before we go into your win in the constituency.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you, and good morning to my lecturer on the other line. Typically, I think that yesterday's election was one that the MPP went into that election with violence. They didn't just attack our youth organizer. They also vandalized the vehicle of the National Communication Officer, Sami Jemfi, who played a major role managing the MP-elect. From there, they also attacked his deputy.
Are you attributing the attack to the NPP? What is prompting that?
We will get there. We will get there because we have evidence. Gabi and Apenya Markin were in the consistency with military people. We have evidence. We've made a complaint to the police.
Military people were those who attacked your men?
No, I'm just saying, I'm just building a point. What went into the whole insecurity of the election? Because clearly our deployment strategy, the police made us understand that depending upon what would happen, if the situation does not escalate, the police have enough logistics to contain all issues of the election. They deployed over 800 men. They had moved the police headquarters to Assin North, and that there was no need for a joint operation. We never expected to see a flash of military officers in that constituency. Even if there was going to be a joint operation, political parties would have been informed that due to a particular situation or the other, the police were going to upgrade their deployment. Now, number two, the MPP and government brought in boys and armed them to the tooth. And so they were led by Owusu Bemba. A section of them were led by the Ashanti Regional Chairman of the MPP. And these are conversations that I have personally confronted them. So I'm not speaking from what I have heard. The NDC went into Assin North knowing that we win and that our motive was not to be offensive. Our motive was simply to be vigilant and to let our issues out. And so if we escalate the security situation, it was going to affect our victory. And so we didn't respond. So for my uncle Peter Masmeni to tout the election as peaceful, I think he's not being sincere with the situation on the ground.
No, he did admit that there were incidents of violence, but he said it was generally peaceful. But Mr. Mande, you've still not answered my question about why you are alleging that these incidents, which involved your youth organizer and Mr. Sami Jemfi, were done by the NPP.
Look, I have done quite an investigation on this matter. And if you want, when you finish the interview with me, go and search vehicle H, number GT4085/23. Who owns that vehicle? Those young men were in the car. They were rented cars. Who rented the car? MPP executive. We made a complaint to the police.
Right.
We just didn't want to escalate the situation. So we have evidence. We have left Pablo at Assin Prasu. I was with the General Secretary of my party, my boss. We left them 5 minutes when the attack occurred. After about 10 minutes, Sami Jemfi was attacked. Before we all got to the police station, Basin Sali was attacked.
How
I
did
must
these...
say that the police
just help
look
us.
unconcerned.
Mr. Bande, sorry to interrupt, but just help us for those who may not have seen the videos or are not aware. What exactly happened? What was the nature of these attacks?
So, Pablo's car, they shot from behind and also physically attacked his windscreen and the right side of his glass, broke them all. So you could see the gunshot through the back. Likely enough, it didn't get any of the people sitting in the car. In the case of Sami Gyakye, it was a form of physical vandalization of his vehicle, broke the back of his glass. But in Charlie, same. They broke the back glass of his car. And those were the nature of attacks that occurred. And so you cannot call these pockets of violence. It was a violent election that the NPP sought to orchestrate in Assin North because they knew that they were not going to win. They knew that the people were going to reject the NPP and reject the president. And so the only option was to compromise security and go all out on attack. Well, we had told them that we were prepared also for the worst, except that we will not be the first to take the step. We have tolerated the NPP in this industry of violence, and they take notoriety in it. And so we have come to a point where the NDC would have to tell them, enough is enough. We are willing to stand on our ground, accept that which is lawful, accept that which is within the laws of election. From today going, we will not let the NPP unleash violence on any part of our party hierarchy.
Well, you have won the election. James Gyakye Quayson is MP-elect for Assin North. I'm sure you feel very excited that all your work paid off. We've heard from your General Secretary and other officials of the party on what worked for you. You were there quite early. You, Sami Gyakye, we are told, did a great work speaking to the constituents and getting them on the side of Mr. Quayson. So what's next for you in terms of Mr. Quayson's trial and your bid as a party to help him execute all that you promised?
For me, I have mixed feelings because I'm really troubled as I sit here. Troubled because if you have a president who gets into the public space, denigrates presidency to the level that he makes comments that are prejudicial, comments that are contemptuous, comments that for me are very preposterous and unprecedented. And we are at a period where I believe that President Akufo-Addo must begin to take responsibility that his government has failed. Two, that he has not developed a single life in this country except his party and his family. And for him to begin to be reconciliatory, he rather takes the posturing that further degenerates, that further dampens and further destroys the already suspected, seemingly relationship between the judiciary and this current body of executive. To the extent that the president can pronounce a matter in court, he understands the verdict. So I'm sitting here and thinking that, okay, so if I have an issue with anybody within the MPP, I will lose when I go to court. So why go to the court?
Mr. Bande, aren't you overstretching what the president said? Agreed, he shouldn't have made the statement on a campaign platform. He should have stayed clear of it. But it is a probability. We don't know what the case is likely going to end in. But there is a probability that if he is found guilty, he would go to jail. If he's not found guilty, he will still enjoy his freedom. Aren't you overstretching it? The president was not as emphatic as you're making him to be, was he?
If this comment came from the MPP General Secretary, Nana B, or any other commentator of the MPP, it makes a lot of sense because they are typical politicians. These, the least will be expected to be coming from the first gentleman of the land, the president of the Republic of our country, the president who himself is a lawyer. And so you are not speaking about a man who doesn't understand legal jurisprudence.
Mr. Bande, is your issue that his statement was inaccurate, or you prefer that he would not have gone into that arena? I want to understand what your problem
I
exactly
believe
is.
that he has further widened the suspicion that the executive, his presidency, has what it takes to compromise the judiciary, and that should be a concern.
How?
Because the president makes prejudicial comments. The president makes scandalous comments on issues within the court.
Okay, maybe we are on different pages. Can you quote to me what he said and why you believe that that's a prejudice statement?
Look, the same comment that the president did.
What did he say?
I'm saying that you have read the statement. We've not even read the statement. We listened to the statement. And I'm saying that there are clear separation of powers between the executive and the judicial. That a president should not be on a political platform discussing an issue before the court. To the extent that the president seems to know that the situation will go to jail. And that
Gyakye
they don't want somebody
Gyakye Quayson could go to jail or will go to jail.
Well, that in itself is wrong because you cannot politicize matters in court. The president's comment scandalizes the court. That is what I'm talking about, because we live in a country where people are feeling insecure. People feel that our judiciary is compromised. The judges must be worried about the comments of the president. The judiciary as an organ of government must be worried about the comments of the president. And I'm saying that no president in the history of our country has ever scandalized the court like Nanado has done.
So your issue is that his statement in itself is not problematic, but he has delved into a murky arena because of the perception about the executive's influence over the judiciary. I just want to separate the issues here.
We can do that, but to add to what you think, because of his capacity in the country, because of the platform he found himself, we are saying that he shouldn't have made a comment. Does it mean the president does not have advisors? Does it mean the president just gets up and speaks without having to refer to his advisors? How many mistakes of such have the president made since he became a president of Ghana, and how did that affect innocent people? And that these are the trends that we are talking about. And we are saying that it is not out of place that the president made these comments, because that has been his posture. The president is doing everything possible to compromise independent institutions of the state. The president is doing everything to compromise the police. The president is doing everything to compromise the military. The president is doing every single thing within his power to compromise the judiciary. And that people do not trust the judiciary, that is an arbiter and a guarantor of our fundamental human rights. And that if you live in a country where you are worried about the executive clearly acting in a way that seeks to undermine the independence of an institution like the judiciary, it should be a worry to all of us. Ghanaians should rise up against it. Ghanaians should speak about it. We should open up the issues, and we should have a full-scale conversation that our president cannot refuse the presidency to this level.
Mr. Bandi, so finally, you have secured a win for your candidate. What is the next move in terms of his work in Parliament while he juggles the case in court, and your party's commitment to helping him fulfill the promises that he's made to his people?
Well, for us in the NDC, a case has been made that Ghanaians are hungry. A case has clearly been established that this government does not discuss bread and butter issues. A case has been made that Ghanaians are more concerned about what they will eat tomorrow, to have life, to be able to put life and soul together, than rhetorics of projects. You have seen what the president did in Assin. And so for us in the NDC, it puts more responsibility on us to work hard as an alternative government in waiting, that we need to bring out alternative policies that will seek to stabilize the situation that we have in our country, alternative campaign policies that will assure the Ghanaian that Ghana is a prosperous country. Leadership can fail, but Ghana will not fail. Our country, Ghana, will not die. Ghanaians will get a better place when the NDC comes to power. And that, for us, it gives us a task to sit together, more united, work on a table, and make sure that when we come to power 2024, we are able to give Ghanaians what we promise them. You will see what will manifest in the Gyakye Quayson's win. One, is a statement of fact that the people have rejected injustice. Ghanaians are saying, look, we are tired. This president cannot continue to use his presidency to persecute innocent people, and we fall for it. A statement has also been made that we cannot allow politically expedient actions to influence the will of the people, and that will reflect into 2024. And so we in the NDC will make sure that we sit on the round table, think properly, and put forward alternative solutions that will put bread and butter issues. Because Ghanaians are tired, Ghanaians are hungry, people cannot pay hospital bills, people cannot travel. If you were paid 1,000 cedis in 2016 or 2020, today your 1,000 cedis is worthless. That, for us, is an issue of insecurity that the NDC must be seen to position itself to have alternative solutions for Ghanaians, and that is what we're going to be doing.
Morning, Mustafa Bande is Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. Let's get back onto Zoom because I've still got Dr. Assin, Dr. Gyakye Quayson, and we've just been joined by lawyer Bobby Banson. I'll just come to him first, and then we will take some comments from Dr. Assin and Dr. Quayson. Lawyer Bobby Banson, so I don't know at what point you joined, but I had a conversation earlier with Peter McMenu on the statement of President Akufo-Addo about the probability of Mr. Gyakye Quayson going to court and whether or not it was prudent for it to even come up on the campaign platform. And I've also spoken to Mr. Bande about that. You are a lawyer. I don't know if you want to take a bite at that. But I would also like for you to share with us what the coming days look like for James Gyakye Quayson, even as the criminal court proceedings continue.
Good morning, and thanks for having me, and happy Eid to all my Muslim friends. I didn't have the privilege of listening to Honorable McMenu, but I joined in when the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC was talking. You know, if I were the president, I wouldn't have made the statement he made on that platform. But, you know, like the politicians always say, when they climb the political podium, sometimes they don't know what comes over them. I would want to think that with hindsight, the president would not have said what he said the way he said because of the who he is. Let me put it that way, because we must remember he's not president for only MPP. He's president for the whole Ghana. And so if there's a Ghanaian, whether he's an NDC man, he's an MPP man who is facing criminal charges, and you make such prejudicial statement, for lack of a better word, then it carries a lot of weight than any person lower than that office would have said. But be that as it may, you see what the president said and the reactions to what the president said, for me, further demonstrates the level of hypocrisy that we have and we may continue to have in our society, particularly towards the judiciary. Listening to the NDC side, strongly now saying that, oh, the judiciary has some dignity that must be protected and the judiciary should not be scandalized. I shudder to think whether it is the same NDC side who in the past have said things that are very scandalous of the court, even call them names, only because they lost the case. or only because there's a decision that does not go in their favor. And I want to put this on record. There are certain actions or these court cases that the Attorney General, I'm just limiting the discussion to the current dispensation, that the President Attorney General has lost, not only in the Supreme Court, but also in the High Court. And the records are there to show. So that it is not as if the court always toes the line of the government acting through the Attorney General as it were. There are cases that the Attorney General has gone to court, even Supreme Court, gone on review, like the case involving the legalization of the narcotic growing of weed, for lack of a better word. The Attorney General lost it in the Supreme Court and then lost it even on review. And so it is not as if every case that the executive arm of government acting through the Attorney General takes to court, the court toes the line. That is not the case. I always say that I have lost cases in the court. It doesn't mean that you should scandalize the court and call them names. But we find ourselves in a situation where politicians from both sides, as soon as they lose their case, they may have misgivings, but without evidence, go to media and start saying things that will incite the public against the independence of the judiciary. And I've always maintained the judiciary is the only organ of the government that if we start to bastardize the way that we allow the politicians to do, then we are headed for doom. Because if there is any dispute between any arm of government or any individual, we expect to go to the judiciary. And so if today the president has said the comment that he made, and I wish that he didn't say that, and the NDC has found a voice to criticize him and say that judiciary must be protected, they must not be scandalized. I hope that if the NDC loses a case, they will not scandalize the judiciary that today they are preaching must be protected. Because you see, my point, and to the second leg of your question, is that the law is no respecter of persons. Whether you're a member of parliament, you are a candidate, if the Attorney General is of the opinion and has the evidence that you have committed a crime, irrespective of when the crime was committed, nothing bars the Attorney General from prosecuting the case. If you have evidence to show that what the Attorney General is presenting, or let me put it the other way, if the Attorney General is not able to present a case to prove beyond reasonable doubt the allegation that has been made against you, the court will free you. If you lose at first instance, you have a right of appeal to the Supreme Court. And so let us not make the argument that the fact that Mr. Quayson is standing trial means that automatically he will be sentenced. And the other argument, which I found very, very interesting, is that, now that he has been elected the member of parliament, it means the people of Assin North want to keep him as his MP, and so the Attorney General should drop all charges. If we follow that line of argument, then we will be in trouble. Because it means that when there is an allegation of any criminal conduct against any person, all that the person has to do is to go and stand for an MP. And if he wins, because the people in his constituency voted for him, the charges must be dropped. Let us keep the judiciary out of politics. Whether you win or you lose, you don't always have to win. You don't always have to lose. You learn. We move on. Let posterity be the best judge. There are cases that the judiciary has decided today, 5 years, 10 years down the line, they have said we made a mistake. They are human beings. They are bound to make mistakes. But the moment you allow politicians to bastardize every decision of the judiciary, whether they are in their favor or not in their favor, then we create the very problem that the NDC Deputy General Secretary is crying about. I hope that he remembers all these things that he's saying, so that if the NDC loses a case, he doesn't come back to say, they were influenced. That is why we lost it. He must remember that judiciary has some level of dignity. He's preaching that we must not scandalize the courts. I hope he remembers this.
Interesting. So what do the coming days look like for James Gyakye Quayson? Still criminal proceedings are happening. What are we likely to see?
I don't expect anything to change. Like I said, the law is no respecter of person. After all, we have the minority leader, the whole minority leader still standing criminal trial. If the prosecution has evidence beyond reasonable that he has committed the offense that is being alleged against him. Let the law take its course. That is why we have the Constitution. It is superior to any person and any group of persons. And so if the Attorney General feels strongly that he has evidence, I'm sure the judge has ordered that they do the daily trial to bring early resolution to the matter. So if they follow through and there's no evidence against him, or he puts up a defense that sways the burden of proof on the Attorney General, which is not able to be displaced by the AG's office, I believe that we will all be here. The judgment will be reasoned. If the party who loses is not happy, you have a right of appeal. I do not expect that his appointment, his election as a member of parliament will change anything at all.
Just hold on for me, Bobby. Let me bring Dr. Asai Kwapo now. Doc, I would like to hear what you have to say, particularly about the president's statement on why the people of Assin North should have given Charles Opoku the nod. And we had Mr. McMenu's response to that. Now, the president said to the people, vote for somebody who can come to me, somebody who can have discussions with me about the development of this place. Mr. McMenu's response is that, well, there's a budget that has a nationalistic view of how development should look like. Then I said that should be the ideal. Now, my question to you is that, does the president's statement point to a certain reality of how we choose to develop our constituencies and our society instead of going through the approved route that he referred to through the budget, through decentralized processes?
You would expect that if the world were perfect, that it shouldn't matter, that once elections are over, there's a national budget, and in that national budget, we set priorities, we decide who gets what, when, how much, and then those development projects go, we undertake those development projects. But I think the reality is also that sometimes, depending on a particular member of parliament or a particular, even sometimes even within your own party, that some may have a much closer ear, let's say, of the president than others. And all of those things can come with an advantage of getting a response to certain needs faster than maybe another person could get. It doesn't necessarily make it right, but sometimes that's the reality that you have to deal with. And that's why, in the process of governance, there are people who have to lobby, there are intermediaries who have to negotiate on behalf of groups, on behalf of areas, on behalf of people. But I think Mr. McMenu is right in the sense that the national budget is the way we approach development projects. And hopefully we are able, as time goes on, hopefully we are able to live up to that way of properly doing things. And then whatever is allocated to an MP via, let's say, the common fund, that it is done in a way that is, that is fair, and that one MP or one area, because they are aligned or not to the ruling party, is not given a special advantage or is not disadvantaged as a result of that.
And the way the president puts it, portray that.
Yeah, you're right. The way the president portrayed it made it sound like if you are an MP aligned with the ruling party, then you might, quote unquote, be able to get development either, you might be able to get development more than when your certain MP is not aligned to the ruling government. I don't think that's how it really works, because I've also seen opposition MPs who've been able to do some really good work in their constituencies as well. I think sometimes in the heat of competitive politics, that politicians end up, making statements or saying things that do not always align with the reality of how things actually work, or at least may not necessarily be exactly how it works.
We saw in Kumewu, we've seen at Assin North how government moved in aggressively to construct roads, to initiate certain projects, to complete certain projects, make attempt at fixing traffic lights and street lights and all that. And there again, there's this idea of disrespect where you ask yourself, does it need to take a by-election to get that? Did you have the money for that? Why didn't you give it to us? It's problematic, isn't it?
It is very problematic. And I think for me, the onus is therefore on voters to signal to politicians that we won't stand for these last minute interventions anymore. Because again, as and even if you look at the roads issue, for example, I think the Minister for Roads, when there were a couple of things happening in Assin North and was asked about it, said, look, this has nothing to do with the by-election, and this would, these projects have already been earmarked and they would continue post this by-election. But there's something about elections that offers a different set of incentives to politicians. They respond well to an election or the prospect of either winning or losing. And therefore, the impetus to act, sometimes, not even sometimes, is always much higher in an election year than in a non-election year. This is where, for me, voters come in. That if voters are able to establish a pattern of behavior that says, if you come in at the last minute, we would remember the years of abandonment, and your last minute gimmicks or last minute efforts is not what we are going to reward. Hopefully we would get to a time when politicians would realize that the efforts at development should be engaged, should be continuous, and not one-time things or things that they do because there's a prospect of an election and the possibility to win or lose. And I think it is up to voters to over and over again demonstrate that to politicians, because politicians are politicians. They will always do what they have to do to win an election. It is up to us voters to decide what we let politicians get away with or not.
Right, and let me just take your thoughts, Dr. Asasante, on the issue of violence. We've just heard from the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC on how Sami Jamefi and the party's youth organizer and another person were affected. There were shots fired in certain instances, vehicles vandalized. Thankfully, there were no incidents of death or casualties, as we'll put it. But this is not something we'd like to hear, especially at this stage in our democracy and all the effort we've put at ensuring that elections are violent-free. Talk about Ayawaso West Wogan, for example, setting up a committee, and all that. What are your thoughts about those attacks?
Yes, I think before I come there, I was about to end my summary.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Before we lost you. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. If you look at the issue of popularity, it came in. There's no doubt that from 2020 up to date, Gyakye Quayson is still popular amongst his people. And we saw also something that also was brought to the fore, the issue that the electorate wanted to know that he has really served his tenure, and so that they can really gauge his conduct or otherwise. That came in. We saw another thing of the Kumawood, group also coming to lend their support, telling you that yes, it's not only the people of Assin, but there are others who believe in the cause of those who think along the lines of NDC. And that also increased the popularity or the support for Gyakye Quayson. Issue of framing was an important one, which we have talked about. The way they frame messages, and that made MPP reactionary, all right? Instead of, concentrating on their own messages, they were reacting to the messages of the NDC. And when you do that, you lose focus, you lose trust, because you are not able to, come out with your own policies and programs or messages, so to speak, but you are reacting to issues. It doesn't allow you to settle down properly. Then the last aspect of it was that the issue of rational choice of voters came to play. that they knew or they know what is right for them. So they decided based on the fact that, yes, this is a candidate that we want. It doesn't matter the inducement and all the things that you are talking about. We want him and he will serve our interest. The issue of constituency-specific issues, and I'm happy Mr. McMahon touched on that, that they were, it caught the MPP pants down in the sense that they were not able to look at the constituency-specific issues that border on the place that the election took place. You cannot look at national, by-election from a national perspective. No, there are constituencies and there are certain pockets of the constituency have special needs that you need to attend to. Once you turn a blind eye on this, you are going to have your fingers bent. But now come to the issue of violence. Violence is something that is one of the enemies of the open society and by extension, democracy. We don't want violence in any form to take place when we are looking at a democratic election. It is something that we detest and we condemn at all times. What happened to the NDC, national organizer was very unfortunate. That yes, what is the point of destroying somebody's vehicle in the name?
We lost Dr. Assin again. Well, we're quickly wrapping up this conversation. So let me come to you, lawyer Bobby Benson. There's a pending case. You've just spoken about that. But moving on, your quick thoughts on what the two major political parties should pick based on events that unfolded at Assin North. Lawyer Benson? All right. I think we lost lawyer Bobby Benson as well. Apologies for that. So it means I'm left with you, Dr. Gyakye Quayson. So I end the conversation with you. There's a case pending. Lawyer Bobby Benson believes that Mr. Gyakye Quayson's re-election, as I should put it, doesn't matter to what is going to happen in court. Considering the president's statements, reaction to that. Moving on, what will your desire be in terms of what we must be saying as politicians in regard to the case that is still pending in court and how Mr. Quayson must approach it?
I think that, can you hear me?
All right, okay, we got you back, so please, you can go ahead and then Dr. Gyakye Quayson will wrap it up with that for us.
The president's statement and also the response from Mr. John Mahama were just unfortunate. In a democracy, and we are looking at what rule of law. It's anchored on rule of law. That there are two components of rule of law: equality before the law and due process. That there's nobody who's above the law, and there is equal subjection of all citizens to the laws of the land. So whenever there is an issue before the court, you don't touch on it. You allow the court to finish its process, then you have the right to comment on it. And even there, you need to be measured and tempered. I think the two leaders did not help us well at all. We are talking about the president and the reaction from the former president too. All these things are aberrations when we are talking about meaningful democracy. We don't need that, because once you do that, you set the stage for people to frown on the laws with impunity, and that doesn't bode well for us at all. Going forward, I believe that yes, now the real test is here. That yes, Mr. Quayson is going to Parliament and is still going to court. The court will work separately from the legislature, and Mr. Quayson will also have opportunity to go to court. Whatever will be the determination of the court will come, and then we'll follow from that. But from now, I believe that what Mr. Bobby Benson said is that nothing is going to change. That yes, he will go to Parliament, and then he will still go to court. At the end of the day, we'll see what happens.
Right, thank you for your time. Dr. Quayson, let me end with you. Your thoughts on the violence and moving forward, what is your expectations of the proceedings in court are?
Yes, we have chosen democracy. I keep saying that we've made our peace with democracy. There are things that every so often may prove to be a challenge or may want to chip at that quote-unquote peace we've made with democracy. So some of these incidents are always rather unfortunate. I'm also though pleased that it wasn't large scale. You want to really commend the police and the security forces for keeping the peace, and hopefully we would be able to emulate this behavior come 2024. Just go vote. I know we all get excited during elections. Just go, stand in, peacefully cast your vote, go home. Once a winner is declared, come out and jubilate. So hopefully, again, the security forces would do an excellent job like they did in Assin overall to make sure that in 2024 we would have a peaceful election, because this is the way we have chosen to go. Moving forward, Mr. James Quayson has been duly elected. And so I believe he would be sworn in and he would carry out his duties as MP, whilst at the same time attending to court to put up a defense against his case, and we let the judicial process play out. But real quick, because Mr. Banson points to or raises a very important issue about how we treat the judiciary. And if I may go back to things that I've pointed out from the Afrobarometer, you would notice that the judiciary is not the only institution in that situation of this declining trust. Our institutions that make democracy work are living in an era of really growing mistrust on the part of citizens. And what I find even more disturbing is that when you probe the data further by party affiliation, we tend to place a little more trust in institutions when the party that we say we are affiliated with is in power, and that trust goes down when our preferred party is in opposition. And I find that very worrying. And what I've been arguing is that it is still, the burden is on our institutions, whether it is their actions or inactions that is contributing to this declining trust, that it is up to them to find ways to sort of rebuild that lost trust and confidence in them. Yes, I know that our politics is also a contributing factor to that. We pick and choose when we like an institution and when we don't like an institution. If it goes our way, great. If it doesn't, then the institution is a bad institution. But beyond that, I also think that our institutions must engage in some amount of self-reflection and ask themselves, why is it that increasingly citizens are losing trust in all of these key institutions? And what can we do to regain that lost confidence and trust in us?
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Osai Kwapong is a fellow with the CDD Ghana. We appreciate it. So that's our conversation on the Assin North by-election. Earlier, you had lawyer Bobby Banson, we had Peter Mahmenu, Mustafa Bande, and Dr. Asa Asante.